What's up, everybody? For the FTWitachi here, you know what it is. Thank you very much for tuning in to our next adventure, our next guide, updated for patch 9.1 of World of Warcraft Shadowlands. Today we're going to be getting into Covenants. We have already released individual and separate videos for Demonology Warlocks, Destruction Warlocks, and Affliction Warlocks, covering gems, enchants, and consumables, stats, priorities, talents, rotations, so on and so forth. And we will be releasing a lot more guides coming soon, especially covering conduits, soulbinds, legendaries, and a lot more. But without further ado, let's get into Covenants. So first off, let's get into a little bit of a quick intro on what are Covenants. Covenants are a core choice at the start of your journey in the Shadowlands that you'll have a choice to decide where your allegiance lies. Would you rather support the Kyrian of Bastion, the Necrolords of Maldraxxus, the Night Fae of Ardenweald, or the Venthyr of Ravengeth? Choosing a Covenant is the most important decision basically your character is going to make in Shadowlands, as the Covenant abilities, soulbinds, legendaries, pretty much everything will significantly impact your specs, gameplay, and performance. Through this choice, your rotation kind of changes. Certain bonuses will appear in dungeons for your entire group, and you will have a lot more to follow when it comes to storylines, story paths. You're going to be able to get transmog items, pets, mounts, so on and so forth. But of course, in today's guide, we're not really going to be diving into the transmogs, the mounts, and the pets. Basically, those niche type of effects that you're going to be given from these covenants. We're mainly going to be focusing on the boost or the benefit that your class and your character is going to gain from these covenants. For example, the covenant abilities. Alright, so we're going to start off with the Kyrian covenant for Warlocks. In general, each covenant has a covenant ability, a class covenant ability, and a signature covenant ability. The signature covenant abilities are class and character wide, and the class covenant ability are specific to each individual class. So again, starting off with the Kyrians for the Warlocks, we got Scurrying Tith. It's a cooldown ability that deals upfront damage and applies an 18-second damage over time effect to your main target. If the target dies with the dot still applied, then you'll generate 5 soul shards. If the dot expires naturally after 18 seconds, then the cooldown is instantly refreshed. You also have the signature ability of Summon Steward. You get to call your steward to bring you a Phial of Serenity that can be consumed to restore 20% of your health and remove all curse, disease, poison, and bleed effects. Your steward additionally offers access to a selection of useful amenities for 4 minutes as well. And next up, we've got the Venthyr Warlock covenant ability for classes. For Warlocks, we got the Impending Catastrophe. It's a cooldown ability that sends out a cloud that travels to the targeted enemy, dealing damage to enemies within its path. Upon reaching its target, the cloud explodes, applying a damage over time debuff to the target and all nearby enemies. In addition, all enemies that receive the dot also have Curse of Weakness and Tongues automatically applied as well. The curse applied is based on the type of mob, whether it is melee for Curse of Weakness or caster for Curse of Tongues. We also have the Venthyr Covenant signature ability, Door of Shadows. You get to wend through the shadows appearing at the targeted location. Next up, for the Necrolords class Warlock Covenant ability, Decimating Bolt. It's a cooldown ability that deals upfront damage and increases the damage of your next 3 casts of a spec-specific spell by 100%. The damage increase is further increased the lower the health of your target. The spells that are increased for each spec are as follows. For Affliction, it's Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul. For Demonology, it's Demon Bolt, and for Destruction, it's Incinerate. And when it comes to the Necrolord Covenant signature ability, we got Fleshcraft. Form a shield of flesh and bone over 3 seconds that absorbs damage equal to 40% of your maximum health for 2 minutes. While channeling, your damage taken is reduced by 20%. Moving near an enemy corpse consumes their essence to Fleshcraft's cooldown by 1 second. And last but not least, the last covenant is the Night Fae with the Warlock class-specific covenant ability of Soul Rot. It's a cooldown ability that applies a damage over time effect to your main target and another dot at about half value to 3 other nearby targets. Drain Life will also drain the life from any enemy affected by Soul Rot and not cast mana. Next up, for the Night Fae Covenant signature ability, you got Soul Shape. You get to turn into a Vulpin, depending on. You also have additional cosmetic forms. teleporting 15 yards forward and increasing your movement speed by 50%. You may reactivate Soul Shape every few seconds to teleport again. Lasts 12 seconds or indefinitely while in a rest area. So next up, we're going to be going over the best Covenant choices for a Demonology Warlock in patch 9.1. Warlocks have also received 4 new legendaries in 9.1 as well, 1 for each of the 4 Covenants, which are kind of the only update that we got in regards to Covenant changes. We also got a couple of new Soulbind and Conduit ideas as well to go ahead and play with, so stay tuned for these guides to come out pretty soon. But without further ado, we're going to be focusing on the main abilities that a Covenant will offer to you from each of the 4. But again, we're going into Demonology. So starting off with the Kyrian. Due to the raid design, and the fact that some abilities naturally play towards the strength of the cleansing effect provided by Summon Steward, there could be some use for the shared ability of Kyrian. However, with recent changes, the cleansing effect is just kind of pointless, so it's not really going to be top tier. And Scurrying Tith does offer full soul shards refresh that you can gain on mobs that are near death. While not that relevant in raids too much, it should have plenty of use in Mythic Plus content where you're rolling your soul shards from pack to pack, which is going to be very, very crucial to getting as much maximized damage done as possible. The most appealing thing, to be honest with you, I'm not going to get too much details into it, but for Kyrian, it's not really the Scurrying Tith or the Summon Steward, it's Pelagos, one of the Soulbinds, so just giving you guys a heads up. But again, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We got the Venthyr. Impending Catastrophe. It's an interesting ability to have in your toolkit, to be honest with you. It sounds great, however, most especially for Mythic Plus, where the Smart Cursing could prove to be very beneficial. Reducing incoming damage from melee mobs for the tank while making interrupts easier to do have more relaxed restrictions. While it serves a similar purpose in raids, you can run the risk of overriding the curse when you're manually putting it up anyways in Smart's cursing function, which decides to go ahead and do something totally different. Its damage is kind of dead, and don't really need the Smart Cursing from the Impending Catastrophe. It could only find its usefulness in like Mythic Plus content as well as high pop battlegrounds as well as world PvP, but other than that, raiding not too much. Currently the spell is vastly undertuned, so it's not really worth casting at all, to be honest with you. And then when it comes to the Venthyr's ability, it's nice to be able to go ahead and teleport yourself, but you have so many abilities that are going to be able to do that for you. It's kind of like the Reaper teleportation. It has that little cast time. It gets you from place to place, but you have so many gateways that are going to do the work for you, and so many other abilities that can go ahead and help you out. And then getting into this next one, the Night Fae, it has a better movement ability for you. When looking at the Night Fae as a whole, the biggest takeaway is the ability Soul Shape, which allows you to have incredible amounts of movement while active. It is absolutely fun to play with, and it's cool just being able to collect all these soul shaping forms. However, Soul Rot does offer some incentives in Mythic Plus, and the damage on single target is not really completely bottom tier. It's not that bad. There are also some other Soulbind abilities that will benefit Demonology nicely. In particular, again, I'm not going to get too much details, but we got Dreamweaver and Naias as well from the Night Fae that do have some nice abilities. So overall, it sucks to say, but especially in 9.1, Night Fae is easily the strongest Covenant in pretty much all aspects of life in World of Warcraft. And I'm going to go even further. We haven't done Destruction and Affliction yet. I think Night Fae is better there too. But stay tuned. Keep watching because you want to find out why. Next up, we got the Necrolord ability of Decimating Bolt, which allows you to buff the damage of your Demon Bolt, which increases in power the lower the health of the mob it hits, particularly powerful in raiding when the typical execute phases require you to amp up damage. There are a multitude of talents, conduits, and legendaries that further buff Demon Bolt, making the Necrolord ability quite interesting. I am currently a Necrolord. I've been Necrolord since the launch of Shadowlands. I absolutely love Decimating Bolt, and I absolutely love Fleshcraft. The damage of Decimating Bolt to me is a lot better than or not the damage necessarily, but the damage and the effect that you're getting from Decimating Bolt just is a little bit more powerful, if not at least the same than Soul Rot from the Night Fae. So if we're just going strictly on damage, Decimating Bolt is probably a little bit better than a Night Fae. However, Night Fae's Soul Rot can have so much more usefulness than the Decimating Bolt from the Necrolord. Again, such as Mythic Plus content. But in raiding, I'd rather Decimating Bolt. But again, Soul Rot is not too far behind. And in Soul Shape, it just having that movement ability from Night Phase is also probably more beneficial than Fleshcraft. But Fleshcraft can provide you with an additional shielding, which we typically have amassed thanks to Soul Reach, as well as all of our other abilities. But having Fleshcraft makes me so freaking tanky. I absolutely love Demonology PvP, especially as a Necrolord Warlock, so it is cool. It is definitely not the most useful ability, but it is very, very decent, especially having that extra little bit of Absorb. When it comes to it, in all walks of content, such as raiding Mythic Plus as well as PvP, at the bottom, you are going to definitely have the Venthyr. It is god-awful in damage, in abilities, in pretty much anything shape or form. Venthyr, it just does not beat any of the other three whatsoever. Again, in Mythic Plus, rating, and PvP. At number 3, I'm gonna have to put Kyrian. It's kind of a mediocre, especially for Demonology Warlocks. There's not too much beneficial from the Kyrian that is going to give us, comparing that to Necrolord and Night Fae. So I do not strongly suggest you go Kyrian or Venthyr. At number 2, I am again switching this now from our patch 9.0 and patch 9.0.5 guides. I used to have Necrolord and Night Fae neck and neck. However, I am, with a couple of the changes from 9.1, gonna have to put Night Fae at number 1. So at number 2, we have the Necrolord, which is just gonna give a good rating to it. It's got a nice flesh crafting ability, which is a great shield to go ahead and have. If you like to PvP, Necrolord is very, very nice. I love how tanky it makes a Demonology Warlock feel. We are great when it comes to having to sit bases on PvP content. We are great in world PvP. We are great in freaking dueling. Arenas, depending on the comp, we can be very nice to have as well as a Necrolord Demonology Warlock. In raiding, it's not too far behind Night Fae. So, I mean, if you want a more versatile setup and more versatile Covenant, I strongly suggest going to Necrolord. However, if you're just looking for that pure damage, if you're looking for something that's going to be great for just all-around damage in PvP, PvE, and Mythic Plus content, Night Fae is definitely easily the best Covenant choice for Demonology Warlocks. Next up, we're going to be covering Destruction Warlock Covenants. Again, the only changes in patch 9.1 were the received 4 new legendaries. Each legendary is specific to one of the 4 covenants, but we're not going to be getting into those. We will be waiting until we get into the legendary video for that. And then, of course, soulbinds, conduits, and everything that comes with covenants we will be going over in other videos as well. In this video, we're going to be focusing primarily on the covenant abilities that are going to be given to us as Warlocks. Starting off with Kyrian, the class ability of Scurrying Tith. Kyrian is overall not a bad option for destruction. Some things to note about the Scurrying Tith though. The spell is duplicated by Havoc, which adds a lot of power to the spell. And if your target dies while affected by Havoc, the cooldown is not reset, which means you can't just alternate between low health targets. So this is both a strong option on single, 2 targets, and heavy cleave. So Kyrian's got its momentum, got its abilities. And then the Covenant ability of Summon Steward. Not the most interesting Covenant ability, but can provide some potions and sell food and drinks, help you change your talents for free, and even play you a nice little jingle. So it's not that bad. Next up, we've got the Venthyr class ability of Impending Catastrophe. This ability is an interesting one, as it can apply either Curse of Tongues or Weakness to an entire group of mobs on a relatively very short cooldown. The damage of the spell isn't bad, but comparing it to the other Covenant alternates, it's absolutely kind of terrible. But as an ability, it's not bad. Door of Shadows is a decent addition to your mobility kit, but nothing game-breaking, because it's worth noting that there's another ability that comes from the Night Fae that is probably a lot better than it. So just giving you a heads up. And we also have gateways, so we have a lot of movement as Warlocks. Warlocks complain about movement. Complain about not being able to cast on the move. Stop complaining about the movement. We got movement galore, fam. Not as much as druids and monks, though. I'm gonna say that. Monks are freaking pissing me off. Anyways, when it comes to the Night Fae, we've got Soul Rot. It's an interesting ability and actually gives you quite a bit of sustainability. You won't really use the Drain Life part of this ability unless you need the health, but if you do, then this is sure to top you off, especially if applied to multiple targets. A lot of the Soulbind traits revolve around the cast of this ability as well, so giving it an important spot in our rotation, Soul Rot is probably one of the higher up class abilities that you're going to get from a Covenant. And then, of course, the Covenant ability of Soul Shake, which I was speaking kind of about in the Venthyr portion. This class ability is probably the best one, as it grants you a blink on a 1.5 minute cooldown, and is just such a great addition to our toolkit. Through the Soulbind tree, it actually becomes slightly more interesting, so just giving you a heads up, stay tuned for the Soulbind guide. Next up, we've got the Necrolords. With the class ability of Decimating Bolt, this ability is very strong on single target, and especially during execute phases where you're able to gain an even higher percent increase on your incinerate damage stacks. We also have a Covenant ability of Fleshcraft. This ability is situationally a very nice defensive boost, especially in PvP content, but also, of course, in PvE, we do need our defenses to help out our healers. So while it can be annoying to channel, which is kind of the downside, there are a few Soulbind options that make it a little bit less annoying, such as Imeni's Ambulatory Flesh. And that being said, reaching this Soulbind perk takes you away from a Potency Conduit slot, though, which is not really ideal. So just giving you a heads up, stay tuned for the Soulbinds and Conduit guides. But Fleshcraft is not too bad at all. So, in all ways, shapes, or form of life in World of Warcraft, PvP content, PvE content, I know Mythic Plus is in PvE content, but it's like kind of its own thing. The worst Covenant to choose as a Destruction Warlock is easily Venthyr. The damage from it is terrible, and you can apply your own curses yourself, you lazy bum. So, and also its Covenant abilities, Door of Shadows, is kind of dead too. So, just giving you a heads up, Venthyr Warlocks are just like not a Venthyr is just not a thing, fam. It's just not. At number 3, I'm gonna go with Kyrian. It's decent. It's not the worst, but it's not Venthyr level, and it's a lot closer to Necrolord and Night Fae than it is to Venthyr. But it has a great Soulbind. It probably has one of the better Soulbinds, but it's still not better than the Necrolords or the Night Fae Covenant. And then when it comes to number 1 and 2 positions, I'm going to have to put Night Fae at a slight advantage over Necrolord, but however, I'm just going to say they're both very strong. Unlike Demonology, I do feel Night Fae is the better of the two in Demonology. But I'm still going to play Necrolord because just my playstyle fits that Necrolord thing and whatnot. But that's a Demonology whole thing. We're on Destruction now. When it comes to Destruction, Necrolords and Night Fae, damage-wise, they're very pretty much identical. And when it comes to the abilities, it just depends on your playstyle. And you know what? Similar to Demonology. Do you want a bubble or do you want to blink? Do you want to look like a zombie apocalypse action going on with the Necrolords, or do you want some butterflies and flowers and have the prettiest zone of the game in the Night Fae? That's pretty much what you're going for between the two. They're both very good Covenants, Necrolord and the Night Fae, for both Destruction and Demonology Warlocks. I'm bringing back Demonology, fam. Bringing it back. Alright, Affliction Warlocks. One of my least favorite specs of the three. You guys can probably tell from my guides. But I'm going to go into freaking major details on this one. Just for you guys, so you cannot say I don't know what I'm talking about. Night Fae Warlocks. Night Fae is by far the strongest pick for Affliction Warlocks. I'm not going to lie. And I'm going to, before we even get into this, Night Fae is probably the strongest Covenant to choose, especially if you are very versatile on what specs you want to play. But Night Fae is one of the strongest picks for Affliction Warlocks. Even before the expansion came out, a lot of people didn't really give Night Fae the look it deserved, purely because of how underwhelming Soul Rot was. However, when you look at the strength of the Soulbind trees, along with the ridiculous movement capabilities of Soul Shape gives, the strengths are pretty clear. The first neat thing for the Night Fae is all 3 Soulbind trees are pretty damn lit. Naya is the first available Soulbind. It probably the most vanilla of the 3. You gain access to a couple of abilities that are absolutely banger. And then, of course, you've got the other two, which is Dreamweaver, Korain. The Soulbinds are kind of lit, not gonna lie, especially for Affliction Warlocks. And then outside of freaking, what's it called? Soul Rot, sorry, from Night Fae, you've got Soul Shape. Put some respect on the freaking Soul Shape, fam. It probably is one of the better Covenant specific abilities that you can get. Night Fae is up there for Affliction Warlocks. Next up is Kyrian. Across the board, tons of the classes are flocking to the Kyrian because of many reasons. First and foremost, Pelagos seems to be the strongest freaking soulbind of all times. He's got tons of abilities that are going to boost up and beef up your Scurrying Tith abilities. Scurrying Tith is also very nice for Affliction Warlocks as well, comparing it to the other Kyrian abilities. So just to give you a heads up, it's very, very nice. The Summon Steward's okay, but it's just, I don't know. I to be honest with you, I don't like it. A File of Serenity that gives me health, cool. I can get a bubble from freaking Necrolords that does the same shit. Just saying. Venthyr. It's an interesting option. Why? Because I'm not going to talk about it too much. Why? Because if you just go Night Fae, you get a better version of movement, which is a Soul Shape. So if Soul Shape didn't exist, then yeah, Door of Shadows would be kind of cool. I love Reaper. I main Reaper at Overwatch. I don't need a Door of Shadows in my freaking Warlock game. I got Soul Shapes. I got Blinks. I got Gateways. I've got Portals. I got Tings. And an Impending Catastrophe. Don't get me started. This ability's trash damage-wise. And then, of course, it applies to curses, which is cool, but it's not. Because I'm here to do some damn, fam. I'm not here to help the group. I'm here to top the meters! Especially as an Affliction Warlock. Fuck you guys. Topping all the meters. Making me Demonology Warlock so bad. But anyways, last but not least, the Necrolord's Decimating Bolt. It just doesn't do crap for Affliction Warlocks. And I'm so sad. It was bangers back in pre-Shadowlands. Ever since Shadowlands went live, Necrolords have sucked for Affliction Warlocks, I'm not gonna lie. The drains, especially if you're talented in the Drain Soul, it just doesn't make sense to use the Necrolord's Decimating Bolt. It just doesn't benefit you at all. However, Fleshcraft, not one of the strongest abilities, but I still love it. Comparing that and Soul Shape are definitely easily the best two Covenant abilities that you're gonna get from Covenants. But to recap for Affliction Warlocks, again, in PvP, PvE, and Mythic Plus content, pretty much all shapes, walks of life in World of Warcraft, at the bottom you're going to have Venthyr. Venthyr was at the bottom of the Demonology portion, and Venthyr was at the bottom of the Destruction portion, and is at the bottom of the Affliction portion for the exact same reason. The damage is absolutely dog poo, and all you're really getting from it is Door of Shadows, which there's a better version in the Night Phase, so what's the point of going Venthyr? What, I get to freely apply my curses to multitudes of targets. Cool. That's not doing damn, fam. So Venthyr, just overall, Venthyr's really bad. I don't even like the zone anyway, so Venthyr can stay at the bottom. At number 3, this one's actually different than Demonology and Destruction. Necrolord is going to be at number 3. Sadly, because as you guys know, I love Necrolords. It's a poor Covenant to choose for Affliction Warlocks. Decimating Bolt does not fit hand in hand well with the rotation for an Affliction Warlock, and its just damage output is really, really poor as well for an Affliction Warlock. Destruction and Demonology Warlocks, their rotation can kind of fit in with Decimating Bolt, but Affliction not so much. It kind of actually ruins your rotation and lowers your damage and hinders your damage even further, so I don't suggest going Necrolord if you're an Affliction Warlock. At number 2, I would go with the Kyrian. It's a great Covenant for Affliction Warlocks. It's great in PvP content. It's great in raiding and PvE content. Even in Mythic Plus content for low keys, it's decent with some potential, and high keys the same thing. It's not amazing, but it's there. However, if you're looking for something amazing, if you're looking for a better Kyrian, if you're looking for a better version of all of those Covenants, Night Fae fits too good with Affliction Warlocks to not go Night Fae. It's absolutely excellent in all shapes and forms of the game. there's no point of going Kyrian Necrolord or Venthyr. And it hates to say, I'm the one saying it, fam. I'm the one saying don't go Necrolord. You know I'm being honest with you guys. Night Fae is pretty much the only covenant you should go with if you're playing an Affliction Warlock. Whether you PvP, whether you PvE, it doesn't matter. Night Fae is absolutely excellent in damage, in abilities, soulbinds, covenants, conduits, legendaries, everything's coming at you with the Night Fae for the Affliction Warlocks. Alrighty everybody, thank you all very much for tuning in to our Covenant guide for Demonology, Destruction, and Affliction Warlocks in Shadowlands patch 9.1. Stay tuned, because next up we're going to be getting into soulbinds, then conduits, then legendary powers. However, I have already been asked in our Destruction, Demonology, and Affliction guides, just go ahead and post in the comments. I will answer anything, even if I haven't released a video yet. I will answer your questions. I've been asked what legendaries do I use as a Destruction Warlock, what soulbind is the best for an Affliction Warlock. I've been asked these questions before, even in Discord. So just go ahead and message me anywhere, social media, all that stuff. Everything can be found down below in the description box, or just come check us out during a live stream. So just go ahead and ask me. I will go ahead and answer. So again, thank you all very much for dropping by. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out, and have a wonderful day.